Today we're talking about the persisting conspiracy theories surrounding COVID-19. Now joining us are Mr. Victor Gao, Vice President, Center for China and Globalization in Beijing, and Mr. Wang, Chief Reporter from the Global Times, also joining us in Beijing. And last but not least, Blackburn-Dwyer, President of Grasshopper Strategies, joining us in Philadelphia. Great to see you all, gentlemen. So why don't we start with Brandon, since these conspiracy theories started in the U.S. Those theories or misinformation I mentioned earlier in the first half, they are not new. They've been circulating for a while now, but we've got more and more evidence coming out contradicting these claims, especially those surrounding the lab theory. But why do they still persist? What do you think is happening there in the States?
Well, we have a number of different things going on. So let me start where we're going to pretend we're talking about a fact for a moment. The lab theory. Every science center in the world has basically said there is no evidence that this virus was man-made or genetically engineered. Here's the problem with actually getting rid of the lab theory. That is only half of the accusation. The other half of the accusation that gives just this very bare minimum glimmer of hope for those that still believe this can go with the idea that it can still be a lab accident, because there is a lab in Wuhan that handles infectious diseases, just like there are labs in the United States that handle things like Ebola or remaining strains of the Spanish flu from the 1918. And there can be, in theory, a breach at one of these labs that would release a naturally created virus into the public. And so the 33% of Americans that still believe in the lab theory, most of them think it's a lab accident, not necessarily genetically engineered. The problem here is that 33% of Americans are holding on to this because the Secretary of State is going on television and saying, I know things, but I'm not really going to tell the public, and I'm going to just intimate, I'm going to say vague things that are all very, very dark and very accusatory to China. The President of the United States is doing exactly the same thing. Every day on television, every day in the White House press corps, every day on Twitter, he's saying things that are vaguely threatening, vaguely insinuating all sorts of conspiracy theories, from China to Obama to Biden to Jeff Bezos. The Trump administration traffics routinely in conspiracy theories, and the problem is that every once in a while they wrap those theories around the possibility of a glimmer of truth just enough that people buy it hook, line, and sinker.
You mentioned this number, 33%. I mean, there was a point where this lab theory was considered fringe. Few people believed it, thought it was too far-fetched. And now we've got 33% Americans believing that this originated in a lab. I mean, that's just shocking to us. Victor, when you're hearing about this, the factors that allow something so far-fetched to go mainstream, the administration there played a major role there.
Well, first of all, it really pains me to see that the United States government, the top officials, are not doing what they are supposed to do to fight against the coronavirus, but really wasting their time in all kinds of conspiracy theories. Secondly, these conspiracy theories are not going to help the Americans fight against the coronavirus. Further, I think the Chinese people, together with people in all the other countries, share this desire to know the real truth about the coronavirus. This will require a very scientific and thorough investigation into how this coronavirus spread. And I think more and more evidence seems to surface to indicate that this COVID-19 as a public health problem existed in the United States as early as in January 2020, or even earlier in December, if not even in November 2019. Therefore, I think the real thorough investigation into the real origin of the COVID-19 virus need to be done on a global basis, including, for example, the closure of Fort Detrick military lab in July 2019, and the very strange vaping incidents in the United States being accused, linked onto the e-cigarette, for example. Now, as far as China is concerned, there are no skeletons in the Chinese closet. China can be very, very open and transparent as to the exact chronology of what happened about this COVID-19 in Wuhan in December 2019. So I think there are still very high-ranking officials in the United States, including the President of the United States, and very unfortunately, this Secretary of State, who doesn't seem to be doing the job of Secretary of State, who probably enjoys doubling up as the head of CIA, running a spy agency, for example. This is the worst thing you can do to run the State Department of the United States. Come on, Pompeo. Be the top diplomat of the United States. Promote understanding and mutual assistance, rather than, for example, try to thrive yourself on conspiracy theories. I hope Pompeo will probably no longer be the top diplomat of the United States. And maybe if he still wants it, he can run a spy agency or conspiracy agency.
So, Mr. Wang, let me go to you now. These conspiracy theories, misinformation, your thoughts on it? I mean, they're not helping the U.S. fighting the virus, clearly. They're not saving lives, but they're helping in the elections for Trump.
Well, I don't know if that helps because the judge is still out. The election is not over. I mean, the Braden and Victor covered the facts of those claims pretty well. I want to judge, let's say for 1 second that this is a campaign strategy by the Trump administration ahead of the election. But even then, that is failed miserably. I mean, you look at this. I will give you one example. Yesterday, during an interview with Fox News, Trump threatened to cut off the entire relationship between China and the United States. I mean, no U.S. president has ever said something like that. This is the most consequential bilateral relationship in the world. And what happens? Nothing. In the Wall Street, the stocks barely moved. In China, no response. So we can clearly see their conspiracy theories, this campaign, smear campaign against China, has taken a toll on the U.S. Influence, on the U.S. Image globally. This strategy is also driven not only by election, but this long-term concern about China's rise and the United States falling status globally. But also, this is not helping that cause. So I think from whichever angle we're looking at this campaign, it is definitely not helping. It's not helping the fight. It's not helping the U.S. economy. It's not helping their global status.
Right. The reason I mentioned the election is this. We don't know how it's going to turn out yet, but we do have some data to show to our viewers now. Despite soaring unemployment rate, Donald Trump's overall approval rating now hit a high in the latest Gallup poll released at the beginning of this month. That's May. So 49% of respondents, and we're talking about a little over 1,000 adults from all over 50 states. It might not represent a full picture, but it does tell something. So 49% of the respondents approved how Trump is handling his job as president. 47% disapproved. And when specifically asked about how he handled the coronavirus crisis, 50% approved and 48% disapproved. I mean, that's a shockingly high approval rating to me. And let me just put things to our viewers, into perspective to our viewers. Up to date, the United States has over 1.4 million cases. The country has the most cases, most deaths from COVID-19 of any nations in the world. It's not doing a great job there. And to me, the Blame China campaign is working magic for Trump. I mean, simple as that. Just blame China and everything will be fine, and he's still got his high rating. Victor.
No, I think, first of all, I never have full and complete trust in any poll. And secondly, right now, the danger in the United States is that the president representing the presidency of the United States is really going all out in the wrong direction. Now, I would say in any country, if the head of the state really screams out loud something, he will have some impact on the people. And whether these people are highly intelligent or whether these people are very much partisan in nature, etc., it doesn't matter. Now, I would say for any head of state of any country in the world, he or she will get up to about 50%, if not more, of popular support, especially in a time of emergency, in a time of national survivability, for example. So I'm not very much intrigued by this particular poll. I would say the numbers are numbers, the facts are facts, and the American people are people of decency and dignity. By the end of the day, they will wake up to the harsh reality. They will know someone is failing in the job of organizing this fight against the coronavirus. So I would say, no matter how far you go out on a limb and try to accuse in all directions, for example, by the end of the day, the truth will emerge. For the moment, I'm afraid the United States is in a damned situation, because if Trump wins, it is damned. If Trump loses, it is damned. I think if Trump does lose the presidential election, and in his case, re-election, then he will kick and scream and never give up. And then the United States may eventually degenerate into chaos and high level of disorder, and then the American people will suffer. If he wins, then the United States will continue on this downward spiral, and eventually the ultimate victims will be the American people. I feel so sorry for the American people, and I hope they will make the right, bold decision in November.
Now, we're getting some comments from our viewers who are watching us online. Let's take a look at this. This is from YouTube. So, Sentinel says U.S. is determined to maintain the top spot in the world and is convinced that the way to maintain the top position is to keep China down. Brandon, your thoughts on this?
I think that this highlights a pretty common belief that the United States and many of its leaders, from Trump to many other folks that were much more reasonable before Trump, started to believe that it was an or option. It was the U.S. was on top or China was on top. There were many leaders that were also, for the last 30 years, really saying that, look, we can grow together, we can develop together. What I want to highlight, though, is in the current situation, I think we're almost giving President Trump a little too much credit if we actually think he cares about how the United States is seen around the world. All he cares about is his domestic audience. He basically, China, if he could make up a country that he could yell about every single day, he would yell about that country. He would yell about Fredonia if he thought it would rile up his base and make him look strong to the people that like bullying tactics. And so he does have a grudge against China. Many of his advisors have decades-long anti-China stances. But President Trump and the explosion of conspiracy theory around his presidency, particularly in the last few weeks, is very specifically about domestic politics. And it's starting to work. You've noted that the Gallup poll has his approval rating going up, even as we have 85,000 people in the United States that have died, an unimaginable number even just a month ago when President Trump himself said, you know, if I hadn't done anything, we might have had 50 or 100,000 people die, but because I did this, it's going to be over right away. And now we have 85,000. We are on our way to crossing 100,000 deaths in the next couple of weeks, most likely, and we see people taking to the streets. We see people carrying signs saying coronavirus is a hoax. We see people challenging stay-at-home orders in court, saying that the president has told us that the rest of the government is taking away our freedoms. This is a president that is determined to win by ripping apart the fabric of the United States. And if he can blame anyone to get there, be it China, be it Vice President Biden, be it former President Obama, be it the guy on the corner that he just doesn't like the look of, be it a governor of a state, he will do it. And China in this position is really beyond any factual blame or factual villainism. And I'm not calling China a villain, but I'm saying it doesn't really matter if there's facts. President Trump knows it's a country that is a wedge issue with his base, and he will just heap any blame he possibly can at China. And all we can hope is that the leaders that we have in the future can repair this relationship, because it's not going to get repaired in the next couple of months.
And this leaked memo we earlier mentioned, circulating among Republican senatorial candidates, that explicitly encourages candidates to attack China. I mean, how far deep, how well planned is this Blame China campaign, Brandon?
it doesn't have to be very well planned. It just has to be a plan, right? This leaked memo, all it said was blame China. It didn't give any facts. It didn't give any go into the labs conspiracy theory. It didn't say talk about the jobs, talk about globalism. It didn't say anything about it. It said literally just don't bother pretending to defend Trump. That means you're going to be on the defensive. Go on the offensive and say the words China and as many bad things as possible in that sentence, and that will help you in the polls. That's what the strategy was. This doesn't have to be a big plan. It doesn't have to be a big conspiracy theory. It is literally bullyism, like a child would do on a playground where they say, hey, you, go hit that kid in the face, and then everybody will think we're awesome. And that's what we're doing right now. It's that level of planning. This is, unfortunately, we're giving them too much credit if we think it is a much more thought out conspiracy theory based, let's get everybody on the same page. It's literally not. It's the pages blame China. Don't let anybody yell at Trump. That's how we win.
And some analysts are saying that why this blame China campaign is working is because it plays into the mindset of a lot of Americans that if China is succeeding, it must be cheating. I mean, Mr. Wang Song, your thoughts on this? Do you agree with this, or what? Give it leverage.
Well, agree. I am afraid not. But I just want to add to what Brandon said there. Also the comment this social media user said. This theory that in order for the United States to maintain its dominance is to kicking down China is zero-sum game. That's wrong. However, having said that, the competition between China and the United States will persist for years to come, even decades to come. But there's a ways to compete fairly and fairly. So I think the theory that in order to kicking down China, we have to go all out, and doesn't matter how dirty the tricks are, is completely wrong. And also, again, it does not help the United States cause to even say compete with China. From what Trump has been saying, from what Republican senators have been saying, they're acting as a failed state, not the world superpower. So that already says a lot about that. And I don't really know that if go on and attack China, all this would drive anything concrete. For example, they're suing China for punitive damage for the so-called mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. But nobody, at the end of the day, nobody with the right mind would think that China will pay a single penny. China would help the world's fight against the pandemic. However, to think that China will pay a single penny in punitive terms, that is complete illusion. And in election season, you have to be loud. You don't have to be correct. You don't have to be right. You just have to be loud and fear-mongering. So I guess within the current political environment in the United States, there a strategy, election strategy, but overall they're hurting the United States, the economy, and most of all, the American people.
We have so much to talk about, but we're running out of time. But I do want to end this on a positive note, because that's what I think is most needed right now. So, Brandon, I'll give you the final remark here. What do you think is needed for cooperation to happen here?
Short term, I'm going to actually say that we have to look beyond our leaders. We have to look to forums to actually engage and discuss. Now, that can be informal forums like this in the media situation, but it can also be remembering that we have an interconnected world that allows us to reach out and talk and learn about each other's cultures, learn about the struggles that are going on inside China, the struggles that are going on inside the United States, the struggles that are going on around the world. I don't mean to be overly idealistic, but we need to create people-to-people connections that keep us strong enough to be able to survive the type of nationalistic, local, chaotic politics that are running the United States. And we can only hope that the rest of the world can be patient, while I hope the United States find different leadership that actually starts engaging in a responsible and constructive manner to continue global trade, global peace, and interactive and engagement so we can all develop together. But in the short term, it's got to start with us. We've got to be a little bit calmer. We've got to avoid rising to the bait every time President Trump goes to Twitter. We've got to avoid rising to the bait every time Secretary of State Pompeo says something outrageous. We've got to find people that we can connect with one-on-one to discover for ourselves that we have more in common than what divides us.
Yeah, we'll leave it like that. Thank you very much, Brandon. That's Brandon Blackburn-Dwyer joining us from Philadelphia, Mr. Victor Gao, and Mr. Wang joining us in Beijing. Thank you all for your analysis and perspectives. And that's going to do it for this edition of Headline Busters. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.